Hello, and welcome to A Reader's Paradise. I'm your host, Earl Sewell. This is a great place to hang out if you love hearing literature performed for you, as well as hearing author interviews. Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of A Reader's Paradise. Before I begin talking about what will be read today, I want to take a moment to thank all of you who have downloaded the show and have taken a listen to my work. It is exciting to learn that I have listeners not only in the United States, but in Canada, England, Germany, and South Africa. Again, thank all of you who have tuned in and listened. Today I'm going to read from a work of mine called Have Mercy. And this is a sort of an intense thriller type of novel. And let me give you a little bit of background on it. The book follows a state trooper who has lost his daughter to a hit-and-run driver and spends his every waking hour trying to find the person responsible for this crime. And unbeknownst to him, the murderer has always been in front of him, but he doesn't realize it. So in this particular scene that I'm about to read from, we're going to follow the state trooper on one of his calls. And I think that's probably about all I'll say about it for now. So, if you're ready, we'll get into our story. Okay. Before we begin, let's take a deep breath. That feels good. Okay, let's get into our story. Marshall was on duty when the heavy snowstorm hit. Weather forecasters were predicting 8 to 10 inches. Marshall had pulled over and turned on his squad car lights in an effort to slow motorists driving down a slick incline. He was waiting for a snowplow to clear the roadway. As he waited, he spotted a car pass him at an alarming rate of speed. Before Marshall could even put his squad car back in gear, the driver lost control over the vehicle and drove straight into a nearby lake. Marshall immediately radioed the location of the accident and requested emergency personnel. He then drove his squad car to the accident site and got out. He opened up the trunk, grabbed some emergency blankets, and rushed to the shore. He saw a man rushing toward him in a hurry to get off the thin ice. Marshall quickly rushed over to help the man. Several motorists who were passing by also pulled over to help. "Were you the only one in the car?" Marshall shouted into Luther's ear as he tossed a blanket around him. "No, my wife is still out there," Luther said, as another motorist tossed a second blanket around him. "Damn," Marshall said. "What's her name?" "Carmen." "You," Marshall pointed to another motorist who had rushed over. "You make sure the fire department comes to this spot." "Yes, sir," said the motorist. "And shine a beam of light out into the dark lake so I'll know where the shoreline is," Marshall said as he prepared to walk out onto the thin ice. "Okay," the man said. Marshall removed his gun belt and rushed off into the darkness, calling out to Carmen. "Over here! Help me, please! The car is sinking fast!" Carmen shrieked. When Marshall reached Carmen, she was desperately trying to get out of the car through the passenger window, but was having difficulty because she had an infant in her arms. Marshall knew that every second counted. The moment the car began taking on water, it would sink rapidly and take Carmen and her baby with it. "Give me the baby!" Marshall reached out and took the child from Carmen so that she could escape more easily. Every maneuver Carmen made caused the ice to crack and split some more. The sound was unsettling. Once Carmen was out, Marshall said, "Let's go now!" He held on tightly to her son as they both began walking as briskly as they could on the slick and unsteady ice. Marshall heard a thunderous snap, followed by the sound of the car sinking into the frozen lake. "Keep moving!" Marshall urged Carmen to get ahead of him. "Don't look back!" he yelled. Carmen had just about made it to the shoreline when the ice buckled beneath her feet and sucked her down. Marshall immediately stopped moving because he couldn't see where she had fallen through. He heard a chorus of voices screaming and shouting, "Pull her out! Pull her out!" Through the blinding snow, Marshall could see silhouettes of motorists and rescue workers who had arrived on the scene, frantically working to pull Carmen from the icy water. "I'm over here!" Marshall shrieked. "Shine the light over here so I can see!" Within an instant, there were lights shining on him. He saw that if he had taken another 4 or 5 steps, he would have plunged into the icy water with the baby. Marshall took a few cautious steps to the left and was unnerved by the moaning of the ice. "Hurry! Run for it!" he heard one of the rescue workers shout out. Marshall was able to take 2 steps before the ice caved in and swallowed him and Nicholas. Marshall's heart was thudding against his chest so hard he feared that it would burst from the electricity of adrenaline pumping through it. He held Nicholas close to his chest and kicked his legs ferociously in the icy water. Marshall kept kicking with all of his might. He finally split the surface and took a big breath of air before he rolled onto his back. He released the baby's nose and heard Nicholas cough before he began crying. With his last bit of breath, Marshall shouted, "Over here!" He couldn't hear the sound of his own voice because his ears were filled with cold, icy water. Out of the corner of his eyes, he could see there was a series of bright lights shining his way. "Over here!" Marshall shouted out again as he shivered and twitched uncontrollably. Hypothermia would take over in a matter of moments if he and Nicholas didn't get out of the water. That was an intense and an exciting read for me. I hope you were able to feel the energy that I was trying to bring to the narrative there. If you want to find out what happens next, you can download a copy of Have Mercy today on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iBooks. It's wherever books are sold. A little bit about this particular work. This was my first foray into suspense writing. And this book is perhaps one of my most proudest works because of the way the story is told and how I structured it so that the reader understands what's happening and the reader understands everyone's relationship to each other. However, the journey of the story for the reader is watching the characters figure out who they are to each other. This is one of those kind of things where it's like 6 degrees of separation. I'm quite sure many of you have heard that between you and a stranger is a minimum of 6 people. And so this story kind of like follows that sort of pattern where this character is spending his life and his resources trying to find someone to bring them to justice. And all the while, this person was very, very close to him and he didn't realize it. Anyway, again, if you're interested in finding out what happens next, check out Have Mercy. You can download it wherever books are sold. Until next time, happy reading.